Hey guys, Still here. Today in Steel Division I'm going to show you a replay of my own German Panzer Division gameplay. It's a really interesting gameplay where initially I have a bit of rush of shit to the brain when I decide to take an armored column directly into a town. I was expecting to hold off on these buildings here. Doesn't quite work out because the armored deck that I'm using, which is the 21st Panzer Division, it really doesn't come with a lot of infantry, or at least not the way that I have the deck set up. So this is a bit of a bad start, but it's going to get a lot more interesting later on. It's a conquest 4v4 on a new map, Colville. You start out with a bit of swampland. Now initially I thought you only have these roads to use, but this is not true. Units can drive through the swamp, they're just not going to be very quick about it. Anyway, it's a 4v4, so I have a little bit more to cover than just this bit of terrain here. I also have a small defensive setup here, one anti-tank gun, one recon unit and one infantry unit to defend my right flank. Although this is not a very easy bit of terrain for an anti-tank gun, because you have line of sight blockers everywhere. These tree lines are making it very difficult to get a good position for your anti-tank gun. So it's going to be a bit of trying to find a decent position to keep these guys at bay. Now, on the previous video that I uploaded for Steel Division, we saw that the French, of which there are two decks in this game, the French can be very, very fast. They can be very effective and they can completely outrush you in Phase A if you let them. This does not mean that the French cannot be killed in this game. They are not some sort of omnipotent force that can deal with any threat and kill off any deck. That is absolutely not the case. That's what I'm going to be showing you in this replay as well. For now, let's just get this gameplay started. We've completed the deployment phase. Time to get these units rolling out. Now, the deck that I'm using, the 21st Panzer, it really shines in Phase C. That's when in this deck you can get the Königstiger, or the Königstiger. It's a fantastically accurate tank, really powerful with the 88mm gun. And these things can do just an immense amount of damage. That's something else that we're going to be seeing later down in this replay. Now, I started out with a Storch over on the left. I want to have a bit of a look and see where the enemy is coming from, because I'm not completely relying on this SPW-231 to spot everything. Once I spot the main column, which is a lot of M3 HTs, so that must be the armored division, I immediately follow up with the Stuka, trying to get at least a couple of bombs dropped on them, get an ammo explosion there, and potentially a hit on one of their infantry units, so that my units in here have a bit more to go on. As you can see, this is a pretty terrible position for the units that I have over here, because all of the enemy units, all of those rifles, come with bazookas, so my tanks are extremely out of position. This is a really bad start. Don't do what I do here. Once I'm looking at it right now, I'm thinking, what the hell was this? What am I thinking? Surprisingly, to some extent, I even get away with it. Offloading some infantry here, a couple of Panzer Grenadiers. I try to get my infantry or my tanks a bit closer, and of course I immediately run into an RPG there. The bazooka manages to immediately wipe out my tank, at which point I realize my mistake and I'm trying to retreat these units to without or to outside of their bazooka range. Fortunately, their bazooka range isn't that good. It's only 200 meters, so keeping my tanks at bay shouldn't be too hard. But the bad side is that all of these infantry units can make use of these buildings to try and sneak up on my tanks. So I'm trying to keep them at bay, and I don't really have to manage them that much because they're falling back. I also have a Panzer 4C. This thing is much more set up as an anti-infantry unit than it is as an anti-tank unit, but it's perfectly capable of dealing with those M3 HTs. So at the moment, I'm really not doing that well. I have control of this building. We do have control of 55% of the map. That's no thanks to me. That is thanks to Shirosuma over here, who has taken up a lot... Correction, Shirosuna with an N. He's taken up a lot of positions here, and surprisingly Blue 4 just did not decide to field any units here, which really puts us at a 55% command rate of the map, we've conquered quite a lot more terrain than I was initially expecting. Here's the Stuka again, trying to come in again. I want to get a bombing run on one of these units that are potentially causing a threat to my anti-tank gun here. And I found this to be a decent anti-tank gun position. Emphasis decent. The problem is that you cannot see anything to the left of this... I don't know, it's not a... I don't know, apple tree yard maybe? You cannot see anything there. So it can defend against units that might come down this road. Maybe here, once they've crossed that section there, but it's really not that easy. So I'm bringing up another anti-tank gun to get a second angle and hopefully get an overlapping field of fire here. Now unfortunately, I run up against an M4A1, which is much more powerful than anything that I have on this area of the map at this point. So I'm losing all of my units. For some reason, Ziltarok decided to surrender. I'm not sure where he was operating, but it seems to be that he had a few units over here that got countered by Shirasuna's units. Over on the right we have another bit of the French. We have Jemirek over here. And you can see that the French are once again making use of quite a few smoke screens, trying to keep all of these infantry units suppressed here. But they're not really moving up yet, because they simply don't have that many structures that they can capture. And the French seem to be really happy on doing just that. Now as you can see, my front line is completely crumbling. I have one tank left, and it's only a Panzer 35. This thing, I really don't expect to survive for any amount of time. So I'm trying to get it back and into a safer position as quickly as possible, but even that unit gets killed off. So, no more front line. And you can see that Blue 4 immediately pushes out pretty damn far, because I really don't have anything left here. So I decided up a secondary defensive position at this line here, which does have really good lines of sight. And at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, where can we push? And this seems to be the ideal position to get a little bit more terrain. So I'm sending a small task force there, a reconnaissance combo of 2 Kubels with infantry inside. We have the Panzer 35S and one of my SD KFZ 259s. These are 25mm guns. 20mm guns. Quite accurate, quite a nice amount rate of fire. They're decent at suppressing enemy vehicles. They're very good at killing off enemy infantry, and they are really cheap at 35 points. If you're coming from Wargame, I would compare these to, let's say, an infantry fighting vehicle, IFV. It's just that this one doesn't carry any infantry. But, at the same time, they are cheaper than some infantry. You can also see the infantry unit that I had initially deployed to this line here, moving up. And this one Panzer Grenadier is just claiming more and more terrain. And by claiming terrain here and setting up a defensive line here, I'm trying to make up for my mistake of taking that armored column into the town. Fortunately, the armored group here does not really take advantage of my mistake. They could have very easily pushed up and very easily taken over a lot of terrain and probably plowed through most, if not all, of my units. Because the units that I do have here, these Pak 3850s, they do not come with any HE charges. They cannot deal with enemy infantry. Now, the interesting thing is that the Sped troop over here can see the enemy, but the anti-tank gun cannot fire at the enemy. Which, currently, you could argue is keeping him safe. Because the M4A1 over here and the second one on the left would pretty quickly turn that anti-tank gun into rubble. And even if I were to send this thing forward, it only has 1 point of armor piercing more than the tank. So bounces are still quite likely. Anyway, my new defensive line is set up. I have my anti-tank gun. I have a another 20mm gun here, a defensive unit, and another Pak 38 defending the second angle on this road. So they won't really be coming down this road. And instead I'm focusing my attention on this position here, where I'm just moving through and pushing up this front line farther and farther, mostly without taking any kind of resistance here. Yes, I'm getting spotted by grasshoppers, but they really don't send anything to counter these units, at least not yet. So I'm happily trying to neutralize this reinforcement route by putting my units right up to the map edge, and by doing so neutralizing their ability to bring in units over here. At the same time, the position on the right seems to be a bit clogged. We have a lot of smoke deployed, mostly by these French units, I believe. And it seems that Bruce Cannon over here is just mostly trying to hold the line. He's not really moving it forward. So I'm going to try and help him out in a minute, once I'm done trying to capture these positions here. And the tough bit is that this unit, while it is nice and fast and can deal with some transports, is not particularly capable in spotting, and does really, really poorly when facing any kind of tank or anti-tank gun. So that's my unit dead. So instead I try to keep my tank a little bit safer than it is, try to put it inside a defensive position, but not before I once again spot that anti-tank gun, because I want to see where it's going and where it has line of sight. So my spot troops are moving up, trying to get a bit more reconnaissance there, as the tank is reversing into a position where it has a bit more cover. So I'm going for this tree, or this bush line over here. But surprisingly, this one lonely tree was apparently enough shade for my tank to actually provide it with concealment. So that is nice and easy, I don't have to do too much there. Also have some sped troop over here, and that's really all that I have. The Panzer Grenadiers are still in the back. I have my U-304, which is a 792mm machine gun carrier that delivered the Panzer Grenadiers earlier. It really doesn't do that much. So instead, let's help out on the right. The Stukas come in a combination. I'm going to try and suppress the units that are doing the most of suppressive damage here. And one of them drops more or less where I wanted them to. Emphasis on less. Because while I was hoping to take out the command infantry here and deprive these guys of those additional veterancy stars, the Stuka didn't quite get the drop. At least they didn't quite get it right, because you can see the craters everywhere, but not really where I was expecting them to go. Now, I realized that this flank is weak at this stage. There are a couple of transports, there are some light tanks, a couple of M5A1s, an M3A3. I can chew through these with my armor, no problem. Considering that we just started Phase B, I can now bring in something that's a bit tougher than the Panzer 35S. So that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing in the Panzer 4H and the Panzer 4G. Now, these guys are pretty similar in stats. These guys have 14 AP, but a little bit more armor, and accuracy-wise, they're exactly the same. So these guys are just a little bit more accurate, sorry, a little bit more armored than their Panzer 4G brethren. And with these two tanks, I want to try and push out this front line, kill off the infantry, and move that line back to Blue 4 territory. In the meanwhile, on the middle of the map, I still have that defensive setup, but I'm really not taking any fire. There's just nothing going on here. Instead, it seems that the guy who is commanding the middle battle group is very focused on trying to get me out of this position. They seem to realize that it's more or less a feint move by me. It doesn't really have any meat. There's no real tanks that can back up this push. Whereas he is dedicating quite a few armed rifles, quite a few transports, an M5 gun, an M4A3, a second M4A3, and I'm perfectly happy with letting him just dedicate a lot of military resources towards this area when I am not really paying attention there. I'm waiting for my tanks to arrive here. This is where we can do the damage, and this is where we can quickly get the kills. And what I'm really doing is trying to get as much terrain gain as possible while waiting for Phase C, because that is when the fun starts. That is when you can get the King Tigers. Now my deck isn't really properly set up yet, because the one unit that I was missing throughout the whole battle is a command tank. I just didn't have any, and that's a big loss. because I could have had my units be quite a bit more accurate and quite a bit less devastated by morale strikes. So bombing runs, rocket pod strikes, and the likes. Anyways, the Panzer IV-G has finally arrived on the front line. Careful not to run over your friend. Yeah, I'm sure they didn't mind. Moving on. These things are reasonably accurate, but they're mostly there to deal with the transports. Unfortunately, I cannot quite see those yet, so instead we're dealing with the Voltigeur over here, and these are the ones that I really want to get killed off. The M8 and the M4A2 artillery observer. I want this thing dead, because the last thing I need is a heavy artillery strike hitting these two tanks, which are arguably too close together. They are too close for comfort here. But anyway, any unit that we kill is a good one, so let's keep firing on these Voltigeur for now, which are really, really pinned down. There's just one guy left, and there we go. No more Voltigeur. Unfortunately, it's not the only one. So, time for the Stuka to come back in. Let's get a bit of a bombing run in. And the targets that I'm trying to emphasize or trying to prioritize currently are these things. 57mm guns. They have 11 AP, which is enough to go through my Panzer IVs. So I'm really, really not interested in having those things fire at me. I'm trying to suppress those as much as possible with the Stukas before they can get their shots off, before they can hit and kill these tanks. And so far the Panzer IV-Gs are doing a great job. They're providing all the support that these Panzer Grenadiers need in order to keep moving up. Every now and then I dash forward, and keep in mind that once these things are moving, they are not very accurate. And most of the time they cannot fire their main gun. They can just fire their machine guns. So it's a bit of a bunny hop tactic. You move one, you fire with the other. It provides suppressive fire for its buddy. But at this point I saw an opportunity to keep pushing. So I just had one slowing down a bit, taking a shot, and then moving up. And I have some reinforcements coming in. 2 Beute Shermans are coming in. Pretty similar stats when compared to these units over here, except that they're a bit more balanced. They do 11 AP damage, and they have 10 frontal armor. These guys are pretty much pure damage dealers. Not very heavily armored, but they do have a nice gun on them. And this is, by the way, not the only 2 tanks here. I have another one, the Panzer IV-H, coming in from the right flank. Managed to kill the artillery observer, and we just have the French on the run here. They don't have anything that can deal with this onslaught of tanks. And you can see that Bruce Cannon on the right is almost having trouble trying to keep up with the armored assault that I'm doing here. One of the things that I was lacking was reconnaissance. I was relying mostly on the reconnaissance that was already in play and the reconnaissance that the tanks were providing for themselves, but their optics are very low. And especially over here, I pretty much risked running into a remainder of the infantry force, and as such I could be taken by a bazooka or potentially one of those frag charges that the sappers deploy. So far the next tank has already presented itself, and I'm trying to get a good line of sight on it so that I can kill it. So Panzer IV-G moves up, gets a shot, unfortunately bounces, but it does force the enemy tank to fall back. Just not quite sure what it is, but it seems to be an open-topped vehicle. So it might be an M10. It might be a Wolverine. Now, time for the Shermans to arrive. They come in on the right lane. Immediately they run into a 57mm gun. So that's going to be a priority target. One of them hits the Sherman, and this Sherman unfortunately gets its tracks broken, which, from what I've been able to see, is unrecoverable. It is not possible to get these tracks back on the tank once they've been destroyed. And thereby, I now basically have a Sherman bunker, as it were. This thing just cannot move anymore. It's completely stuck. Now, being quite fed up with the lack of reconnaissance, I bring in... Sorry, that's my WhatsApp, not yours. I bring in an SPW-231, and I now have a pretty decent line of sight. Trying to move up with these units, and there we go. It is indeed a Wolverine that we have shooting here. This thing needs to go, and fast, because it's a very dangerous unit. And it has the potential to chew through all of my tanks, one by one by one. You can see that it is putting quite a lot of pressure on the Shermans that I have over here, as well as potentially threatening the Panzer IV-H. The Panzer IV-H doesn't quite take that thing too seriously yet. I should have microed this thing a bit better. Instead, taking out the M8 over there. And thankfully to, I think, a command unit here. Yep, we have the Pioneer Führers. These guys are providing veterancy for the units that I have over here inside their area of effect. And we're moving up. There we go. Wolverine's been killed off. Thank you, Panzer IV-H. Now, at this point, the French don't really look that impressive, do they? There's not really that much that the French can put up. Yes, they have anti-tank guns, but these anti-tank guns are just not numerous enough. Most of the time, my tanks kill them before they even get a chance to fire. Now, one thing I could have done better here, a lot better, is use smoke screens to conceal an approach or block line of sight on one particular area and then move up. I just didn't really have the smoke. I just didn't decide, or decided not to bring it, because I wanted to focus on keeping more firepower in the game. I was doing very well on my armored rush. So far I haven't lost a vehicle yet. That's not going to last, unfortunately. It's not quite going to last as long as I would hope. So instead, I just keep charging forward. And this is another risky time for my Panzer IV-H, because if there is an infantry unit in here with a bazooka, it could very easily wipe out my forces. Fortunately, there isn't one. But what there is another reinforcement wave of HDM5s, as well as an M157mm. Again, this thing has to go, and fast, because these can very easily penetrate the armor on the pretty, comparatively to the Sherman, lightly armored units that I have. You can still see, by the way, the Beute Sherman here, with its tracks broken, it can still rotate the hull, and there's no animation for tracks broken, but the unit just refuses to move whatsoever. It's just not going anywhere. Now, I'm still pushing. I managed to kill off the anti-tank gun here. I'm still getting very good support here from Bruce Cannon, who keeps suppressing or keeps pushing forward with his Stug 4. And every additional gun that we have is very, very welcome. Unfortunately, I lost one of my tanks here. Not exactly sure what killed it, but I think it was this M157mm. So that's another priority target for me. And unfortunately, keeping reconnaissance close is not as easy as I'd hoped, because they are proving quite difficult to bring in and keep alive, especially. Now at this stage, all of my tanks are clustered together, making them all take the same amount of morale damage from suppression. Unfortunately, I lose a Panzer IV there. I really hoped that I could keep that thing alive, but it managed to angle its side armor towards an anti-tank gun, or at least that's my estimate. And as such, got this thing killed, unfortunately. Anyways, I have some reinforcements coming in. I have the big guns arriving on the battlefield. These are King Tigers, or Königstigers. Armor, 19 points. Accuracy, 7. Armor penetration, 22 points. Range, 1200 meters. They are not particularly fast units, but especially with the veterancy that they have, this one's a 2-star, this one's a 1-star, they are incredibly accurate. I've seen these things fire at accuracies of 72% on average. Once they start getting hit or start getting suppressed, you tend to get them to about 50, sometimes 27. But most of the time, they are doing perfectly well on their own. Of course, they are not sheerly a weapon that you can send out by themselves, because that will get them killed. That is not going to keep them alive for long, and especially their optics, again, very low. These things are very blind. They need to rely on optics provided by other units. Now at this point I lost quite a few more of my vehicles. The entire armored group that I had over here has been killed off. You can see the smoldering wrecks over here. This is one of my Beute Shermans. We have another one of my tanks burning over here. Another one got killed off here. And that's just all the armor that I had. Of course we still have this Sherman here, but it is completely tracked and it's not going to move out anytime soon. So, time for the King Tigers to take the front line and start dealing damage. Now the beauty of these King Tigers is that so long as they're presenting their frontal armor towards the enemy, they are invulnerable to 57mm guns. These things only have 11 AP at max range, and I believe that per 100 meter range that you get closer, the damage or the AP improves by 1 point. So as long as I keep these things at maximum range, they will not be a threat to my Tigers at all. What I'm going to be trying to do is concentrate or concert an effort of the Tigers with the Stukas, so that the Stukas keep the enemy AT guns pinned down and the King Tigers focus on dealing with pretty much everything else. And it's just a very, very target-rich environment over here. King Tiger moves forward. Already got its first bounce over here. Time to get these things firing. There's the first kill. Jeep MMG. Next one moves up. Locks onto a target. And wipes out, or nearly enough, wipes out the M5A1. Drops off the infantry, basically in a hurry. And there we go. That's the kill. Now, of course, so far I'm only killing lightly armored stuff. It's not really anything too interesting. That's when I spot an M10. Again, not terribly heavily armored, just 8 points. But this thing has to go. Even though with its 13 AP gun it cannot do anything against the King Tiger at range, I still want that thing dead. So, time to aim one of these King Tigers towards the M10 and have it do its killing. There we go, King Tiger fires and immediately wipes out the M10. Of course, at this point we're drawing quite a bit of attention here, and this is turning into a killing field for these Tigers. They just wiped out another tank over here. At least that was an M4 that we killed off. These things are really expensive, but with 3, maybe 4 kills, especially on, for example, M10s and tanks, you can very, very easily get a lot of points. And these points do ramp up. Just keep these things alive, keep them killing, and repair them or at least replenish their ammo when they need it. But even that is not that likely to go down quickly. They carry 4,500 machine gun rounds, 40 HE and 40 AP rounds. So we should be fine. We really don't need to worry about dealing with any resupply anytime soon. There goes another transport. The 57mm that was hiding behind it also took quite a beating. And this is where I make a mistake with my tanks. I'm about to move them up too close to this tree line. In the meanwhile, over on the middle, we have, who's this again? TLFOAD, who realized that I'm pretty weak over in this area, and he is pushing. So he's gaining quite a bit of terrain on me, and I just don't have any optics, so I don't really have any way to spot what is exactly pushing there. Doesn't matter too much. I'm still working on this side. I'm killing off units as fast as they spawn. But most of these AT guns just take a few shots to kill. So these are the ones that are slowing me down most. So to help out and bring an additional gun and or a meat shield, I decided to bring in another Sherman. This is a fresh Sherman, by the way. The other one is still tracked over here. And the Sherman just keeps moving up and provides another bit of HE firepower as well as machine gun firepower to deal with all of the infantry that they still have over here. And this is where we run into issues. Sappers. I see them, I move back as quickly as possible, and I stay out of their range. At least for now. The front line moves up a bit, as I think the SPW 222 moved up over here. potentially we killed off something here, but the sappers are still there. So when my King Tigers moves forward, gets awfully close to these sappers, but I have to move up a bit in order to get kills, or at least line of sight on these units here. The M10 keeps moving up. At this point they're getting quite close to my units, and at this point they might get lucky and get a side shot. There we go, there's another sapper shot, almost hitting my King Tiger. We're now pinning them down. These guys are taking fire from absolutely everything. At this point I think that they're dead. At least I hope so. And immediately cannon spawns in quite a few more of these transports with infantry, so we can capture these tree lines here and move the front line again. King Tiger keeps moving forward. The other King Tiger took a bit of a beating here. Most of them are bounces, but the thing is getting quite a bit nervous about that. There we go, killed off another M10 tank destroyer. And we have another M10 already lined up. And there we go. One sapper survived. And it finally got the kill on my King Tiger. So King Tigers can be killed. These infantry units, with their bazookas or with their anti-tank weapons, just basically kill anything that they can get their hands on. Fortunately, it was the weaker King Tiger, or the slightly less veteran King Tiger, that got killed off. So I still have my most accurate King Tiger surviving here. And it just keeps pushing, it just keeps killing, it just keeps using these fantastic weapons that they have to keep the enemy at bay. Now, in the meanwhile, on the middle of the map, I deployed a few more units. Not really too heavily focused on skirmishing here. I just want to make sure that blue doesn't push my front line back too far. At the same time, we have an opportunity to keep pushing here. And this side of the map, I wasn't really paying attention to. I'm not sure what happened, I'm not sure what they were up to. I was way too busy pushing on this end with the King Tiger. And right now I'm also bringing a Rheinenwerfer, which is an MLRS system. The HE that they do, not stellar, 10 HE, 1200 meter range. I mostly use them to just get a bit of suppressive fire on those anti-tank guns there. Because a 76mm gun could be a threat. So thankfully the Rheinenwerfer immediately takes it out. King Tiger fires again, kills off another transport, and this is seemingly what just keeps happening with these things. I think that we're going to need a pretty heavy anti-tank unit for Blue 4 to deal with these things. Because they are just so incredibly effective at dealing with enemy vehicles. If left unchecked, these things are remarkably hard to deal with. And yes, they're a significant investment, and even in this phase I get 125 points, so it's basically a 3-minute save for me to bring one of these in. But keep in mind that when you are in phase B, and you notice that the guy with the 21st Panzer Division is not bringing in any units, that's when you need to get worried. That's usually when he might be saving up for the King Tiger. And once that is happening, it is going to be quite an effort to keep these things killed off or suppressed. Bombing run unfortunately did get my Tiger so panicked that it was forced to retreat. But I believe that that is the first time that this thing was forced to retreat in all the time that it's been on the front line. Most of that time, it's been just dishing out fire. You can see it fired 22 HE rounds, correction, 15 HE rounds, 22 AP rounds. It just kept killing everything. Now in the middle of the map, a bit of skirmishing as I mentioned. My Pak 38 50mm finally has a job, as it gets to deal with an M4A1 up close. Unfortunately, there's quite a bit of infantry in these woods, as it later turns out, so I don't really have the opportunity to make the best use of this 50mm. But so far, I'm keeping these units at bay. I'm keeping the weapons damaged, I have this tank falling back. At this point though, the tank gun, or the AT gun, gets quite heavily suppressed, thanks to the M3 HT there. So I'm just using some cheap stuff to reinforce this position and keep them at bay. M4A1 at this range has 9 armor, but my tank starts with 7, and I'm hoping that I can get it close enough to get a kill shot on the M4A1. It's basically point-blank range. It's not that likely to miss, and its penetration value, unfortunately I cannot quite show you at the moment, but is 100%. It's guaranteed to penetrate if it hits. Fires, kills off the crew, no more M4. And with the M4 dead, you can see that the front line immediately shifts back to blue. We are at 53% currently. Only a few more points left that we need, and then we've won the battle. And yes, the King Tiger is still alive, completely calm once again. And, yeah, I mentioned it already, but one thing that I still need to work on in this deck is bringing a command tank. Because a 3-star King Tiger would be even more accurate, have a better rate of fire, and as such do more damage. So these things can be pretty damn deadly. To kill them, I'd recommend trying to come into the side with, for example, an anti-tank aircraft. Because at the front they have 19 armor, at the side they only have 9, which is something that anti-tank aircraft can pierce. So that's one way that you can deal with these units. Now, thanks to that initial fuck up in the middle, I lost quite a few units there, but on the right flank I also lost quite a few tanks. So 2245 points in losses, 3293 points in kills, but most of all, I just wanted to see what that tank did. What could the King Tiger do? This is the one that got killed off, Schumann and the King Tiger. Quite a few interesting kills here. We got the M4A3, a second one, and an M10A1. This combined is about 370 points, I think, which is decent. This one got even more. An M4A3, an M7 Priest, it got the M4A2, that's 120 points right there, an M10, it got another Priest, it got a couple of cannons, dealt with some units of infantry, didn't really get the chance to kill a lot of tanks, because at that point I believe the French were done with most of their tanks. But this is just something that one King Tiger can do. Just make sure they're supported, make sure they have recon, and make sure that you keep an eye on these things. Because if they manage to get a side shot on your King Tiger, then you're very likely to lose it. And that's it for this gameplay video. I hope you enjoyed the show of force by the King Tiger. And I recommend that you start coming up with strategies on how to deal with these things. Because once they are here, they become quite difficult to deal with. So let me know what your thoughts are on how to deal with a King Tiger down below in the comments. Anyway, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon for more videos.